friends. I am doing today's episode in response to a request by a listener who asked me if I were to list 10 things that help us human better. Because, of course, we talk about the practice of being human and how to do this humaning thing and to just get better at being human. What does that look like? Because it certainly does not include perfection and it doesn't include having it all figured out. How can we be human better in a way that makes our lives sweeter? And I think offers us some peace. I don't know about all of you, but the more I live, the more I recognize that so much of my suffering, so much of my struggle has been rooted in my belief systems, in the stories I've been telling, in my earliest years of coming into this world, in my childhood, and maybe certain needs that I didn't have met, right? And maybe being in an environment and a family system that was dealing with a lot of different stressors that maybe weren't named, but that I felt. And then I made meaning out of them, I interpreted them, and then I went to work on making those things true about myself and about the world. And I think all of us do this. I think all of us have a way of trying to make sense of things. And we have these intricate and interwoven stories that can create a lot of unnecessary suffering. So the more we free ourselves from these stories and these beliefs, the better we know how to human. This is just a kind of a love note to my listener and really a love note to our humanity because there's this truth that I think across the board is something all of us want to grasp more, which is this. We are whole. Much of our suffering comes from forgetting this knowing, this wholeness that all of us are, this worthiness that is at our core. And then we're always trying to earn back something that amazingly we never lost. It's always been there. I think many of us navigate life from three core struggles: a feeling of insecurity, a lack of safety, and unworthiness. This sense of we are never going to measure up, and that by not measuring up, we never really truly belong. We are never seen and known. And that, my friends, is where I think we struggle the most. We fear we're not enough, that there isn't enough, and that if we don't perform, produce, or perfect our way through life, we are not going to be okay. And this is all untrue. This is all a lie. This episode isn't going to be about performing better. It's not about making you better. It's about helping you human better. It's about remembering what it is to be human. We're going to be not striving or becoming someone new. This is more about softening, reclaiming, and returning. Okay? All right, so let's begin. First one that came to heart and mind was to pause and question the story, because stories drive so much of our lives. And yet, these stories are often unconscious, or at least they're just below our conscious awareness. And so we have no real idea of what is driving our actions and behaviors. We think it's the surface reasons. What we don't understand is that beneath the surface, if there is a belief that maybe is I'm not smart enough, or belief I am not capable of figuring things out, or a belief that I'm never going to be with someone, that I'm always going to be alone. These beliefs, although they might sound like just truths, they actually become our truth. They become our reality based on believing them. But when we question them and examine them, we can then create a different trajectory, a different path that isn't about perpetuating the story that we're always going to be alone. So we make choices and decisions that actually only make that story more true. Maybe it's the story of we're not smart enough. So what do? We don't engage with experimenting and trying new things and learning when we don't know something because we don't want people to know that we don't know. So we actually perpetuate this belief, these unconscious, almost like just below the surface beliefs. I want us to create a conscious awareness around them because they are the things that we're reacting to and assuming. And then we spiral from. But it's often not because of what's happening, right? But because of what we're making things mean. So to begin changing this, right, we must bring the story into the light. To start by noticing moments that might trigger us, that activate us, that we feel things in our bodies. That's always a good indicator. Maybe where we get tight or defensive or overwhelmed or scared. That's your signal. Because underneath each reaction is a belief, often a limiting belief from long ago. So it might be I have to earn love, or I'm too much, or I'm not safe until I'm in control. So to question the story is to really access your freedom. After a moment of reactivity, after something that really activates your system, take a pause and ask, what am I believing right now? And what do I think this means about me? What is this saying about me? And with that pause, I want you to ask, is that belief actually true? From where is that belief coming? Or is it just something I've practiced believing for a very long time? What I also love about beliefs is their words, their vibrations. That is all. They are nothing more, nothing less. So believe whatever we believe. We want to believe things that have good vibration to them. We want to believe things that actually help us show up and elevate us, right? Help us human in a way from a whole place, not from that scarce place, not from that not enough place. Number two, dear listeners, I would say is trusting the body's intelligence. I think we are all so disconnected from our bodies, and this is by design, especially for women in our society, but I think men have it just as much. Remember this, our body is not the problem. It's really our friend. It's our greatest ally. Think about symptoms as signals, sensations as messengers. They're invitations for us to pay attention to what's really going on. Maybe it's anxiety or fatigue or restlessness. When you feel these things, right, when they come up in your body, these aren't flaws, they're flags. And often the body is speaking to us what the mind refuses to acknowledge. What the mind is believing to be true, it's like our body is a servant of the mind, and it's going to continue to tell us what we're believing to be true, even if we don't know on the surface what we're believing to be true. If it doesn't feel good, it's a good indicator to examine it. Instead of, and as is true in this, I think, culture where we live in a place that rewards more that numbing and that overriding and that performing. Okay. Healing, though, only happens. Wholeness only comes from when we start really listening instead and tending to and taking radical responsibility for our experience in this world. So try this when something feels off. Scan your inner landscape. Am I rested, fed, regulated, hydrated, nourished? What is this symptom trying to communicate? What might it need from me? Maybe it's even just going to the bathroom and taking time to honor our biological impulses instead of rushing. Pause, take a moment, create space. And when something feels off, notice and listen, and then decide your next steps. Number three would be really getting curious instead of being critical and judgmental. Our human brains go to criticism and judgment very quickly, to negativity bias, right? Because that is coming more from scarcity and also survival. We have to manage our minds to come from curiosity and compassion. When we come from criticism and judgment, this is where shame resides. It's one of the most human experiences, but it's one of the most painful experiences. And it is something that I think all of us can shed, because I don't think shame 98% of the time really has a place. Guilt, that's always a good sign that we can pay attention. And if we're feeling guilty about something, that's not a terrible thing. It's always a sign maybe we're not acting in alignment. But shame, I believe almost every time over, it's not necessary. There's nothing that comes from that that is good, because it says there is something wrong with me. Not just that I did something wrong, but I am wrong. Instead of taking ownership and coming from curiosity, we shut it down, because who wants to face that I am wrong, right? No one wants to face that. We'll do everything we can to get away from that belief. But instead, I want you guys to just think about how can we have curiosity and compassion, recognize where we might have misstepped, where there was a rupture, where we're part of the problem, right? What part did we play? And then how do we proceed? Get curious. If there's feedback we've received, instead of taking that as judgment, where is the constructive piece of it, if at all? There's always a little bit of piece, maybe a good big nugget, but seek that instead of seeking the judgment, okay, and operating from shame. As we all know, I think this is true for pretty much every one of us who are human, that our mistakes, we meet them often, and the messiness of what it is to be human with self-judgment. We believe there's something wrong with us. And we're always trying to hide that, and we're trying to get ahead of it, and we're trying to take classes and get degrees and be in relationships and outperform these things because of that self-judgment. But judgment keeps us stuck in this lie that we are not enough, that we are not just as we are whole, right? And shame thrives in silence and secrecy. So curiosity, I love, is the heart opener. It's the opposite of shame. It opens us, expands us, helps us, it allows us to create space. And it says, what happened here? What was I feeling? What was I needing? That maybe I wasn't giving myself in that moment. And maybe I can do so now. Compassion allows us to stay present with the parts of ourselves that we'd rather avoid. And there is not a bad part. If I could scream this from the rooftops, there is not a bad part in any of us. There are parts that need to be upgraded. There are parts that need to have our arms wrapped around them and to say thank you for your service, and let's find a new role. But that new role only comes from creating some different beliefs and from operating from a software that has been updated. So compassion is always a good place to start. Curiosity, the most wonderful of things, allows us to stay present with those parts of us that otherwise we might dismiss or hide or beat ourselves up for. And that is what actually allows for transformation to happen. So try this. When you mess up or you spiral, I want you to gently ask, what part of me is hurting right now? What would compassion say instead of criticism? It'd be different words, different frequency to it. We'd feel that in our physiological experience, in our bodies. And I think it would also open us to a different way of responding. Less reactivity, more responding. Number 4 would be kind of this tending to your inner ecosystem, as I like to say. Because when we offer TLC, tender love and care, to our insides, there is something profound that happens. Our mood and our mindset, these are not created in isolation, my friends. They're influenced by many factors: your biology, your environment, your habits, your upbringings, your family values, right? Your relationships. And along with that, what else also impacts our ecosystem, our inner ecosystem, are things that are preventable. Things that if we were aware of, all of these things, I think, preventable to the degree that once we have awareness around them, we can address them. We can look at them and see, where can I make some changes? So even things like blood sugar crashes, which I hear a lot of times in my clients, right? Or overstimulation or sleep deprivation, another big one. Maybe toxic inputs, right? Whatever you're watching, whatever you're bringing into your being, these can all create emotional storms that feel like kind of this personal failure, when they're actually just biological impulses that can be prevented by us managing those inputs, by us meeting those inefficiencies. We can meet those things that maybe are lacking, and we can provide some sustenance, some nourishment to fill those buckets back up that maybe we have depleted unnecessarily, probably unconsciously, and take back ownership of those things and really be personally responsible for them. So I want you to think about taking care of self. This is no small deal, but it is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself. You are radically responsible for your experience. It really is the foundation for a life well lived. And it's also the foundation for some emotional clarity that we're all seeking when we're tending to ourselves and offering that TLC. So I want you to try this. Choose one upgrade this week, some inner ecology kind of upgrade, meaning something like could be reducing sugar, it could be taking a morning walk, it could be setting a phone boundary, it could be spending time in nourishing connection with someone, sending a text, maybe making a call, FaceTiming someone you love. You haven't talked to in a while. I was talking to a young gal the other day, and she said she now calls her grandmother every week, and it delights her and it delights her grandma. Nourishment, right? Good old nourishment. Your system will thank you. Pay attention to those things that nourish you from the inside out and do more of those. 5 would be loosening the grip on control. And what I mean by this, because I think all of us don't like uncertainty. This makes sense as humans because our brain thinks of uncertainty as danger. It's a threat. And when there is uncertainty, we are doing everything we can. Our mind is making meaning of everything and trying to create a sense of control and meaning and purpose. And it is it is constantly in process of giving us a lot of the worst case scenarios because it wants us to be prepared for whatever is ahead. So we don't even recognize this as though it's optional. We just feel like we get kind of like out of control, and we try to control everything in our power, and we can really create suffocation for the people in our world as much as also for our lives, right? To be able to breathe. Control, as I said, it feels safe, it feels predictable, but it's rooted in fear. And the tighter we grip, the more we suffer, and the less we can come from love. And I think every one of us, if we were thinking about values, every person I work with ultimately would say that love is one of their values. And if we want to truly come from love, we've got to loosen the grip on control. Peace, my friends, isn't found in micromanaging everything and everyone. It's found in allowing, in softening our resistance to reality. Okay, so try this. Ask yourself, where am I trying to force something right now, with someone or with something? What might open up if I could release the need to control this outcome or this person and allowed for what is? And maybe came from curiosity and expansion and compassion, less from judgment, less from criticism. What would that look like? And see how that would change your experience of the very thing.